is the Panasonic Lumix S1II actually good for? Who should walk away? And does it make sense for a regular photographer who's not chasing Hollywood budgets? That's the question I hear a lot when folks stare at the price tag and wonder if the extra megapixels and the full-frame label will really change their day-to-day shooting. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I've spent the last few weeks testing the camera in a mix of street walks, a low-light indoor gig, and a weekend video shoot, and I'll walk you through what mattered most when I tried to decide whether to keep it or hand it back. First off, the S1II is a full-frame mirrorless body that promises 24.1 megapixel resolution and 6K video capture, but those numbers are only a starting point. What really decides whether it fits your workflow is how the camera behaves when you actually press the shutter or the record button. For someone who's used to the point-and-shoot simplicity of a smartphone, the learning curve can feel steep, especially with Panasonic's menu system that leans heavily on layers of customization. I found the main shooting menu relatively approachable after a few minutes of scrolling, but digging into the deeper settings like customizing the AF area or tweaking the active image stabilization curves requires a willingness to spend time in the manuals or online videos. If you love tweaking every parameter to suit the scene, you'll enjoy that depth. If you prefer a dial-and-go experience, you might spend more time hunting for the right setting than actually shooting. Autofocus is one of the biggest deal-makers for the S1II, and the phase hybrid AF with AI does feel confident in most situations. In bright daylight, the camera locks onto faces and moving subjects within half a second, which is handy for street photography or kids' parties where you don't have the luxury of waiting. The AI component tries to predict subjects that are about to leave the frame, which can be a lifesaver when you're chasing a runner or a dog. However, the system isn't flawless in tricky lighting. In a dimly lit restaurant, the AF sometimes hesitates, hunting between the subject's eyes before finally settling. I managed to get consistent focus by switching to the AF area mode and manually selecting a focus point, but that adds an extra step you might not want to think about when you're trying to capture a fleeting moment. Low light performance is where the full-frame sensor really shines. The 24-megapixel CMOS sensor holds onto detail better than many APS-C rivals, and when I cranked the ISO up to 6400 for a live music venue, the images retained a decent amount of texture without turning into mushy grain. The colors stayed relatively natural, and the dynamic range allowed me to pull back some highlights in post without the shadows blowing out. That said, the camera's base ISO isn't as low as some other full-frame options, so if you're shooting ultra-clean astrophotography you might notice a bit more noise than you'd like. For most everyday low-light scenarios, concerts, night streets, indoor events, it delivers more than enough quality. One of the standout practical features is the active I.S. image stabilization. Panasonic has built a 5-axis sensor shift system that works both for stills and for video, and in my tests it reduced handheld shake by roughly 1 to 2 stops. When I filmed a 6K clip while walking through a city park, the footage stayed surprisingly steady without a gimbal. The catch is that the stabilization engages a tiny amount of crop on stills, so you lose a few % of the field of view. If you rely on ultra-wide lenses for architecture or landscape, you'll feel that crop more than someone shooting portraits or medium-range subjects. Also, the stabilization can't fully compensate for fast, erratic motion, so a tripod is still advisable for long exposures or heavy telephoto work. Now, let's talk lenses. The S1II uses the mount, which is relatively new but already has a growing ecosystem. Panasonic and Leica have put out a handful of prime and zoom lenses that cover everything from ultra-wide 12mm to a 70,200mm f/2.8. The advantage here is that the lenses are designed to work seamlessly with the in-body stabilization, so you get a cohesive system. The downside is that the current lineup is still pricier than the older Micro Four Thirds lenses you might already own, and you'll have to invest in a few new glass pieces to truly unlock the full-frame potential. If you're just starting out and already have a decent Micro Four Thirds kit, the S1II could feel like an expensive upgrade without immediate payoff. Battery confidence is another practical concern. The S1II uses a larger battery than its predecessor, and I got roughly 420 shots per charge when shooting stills in a mixed environment. That's solid for a day of event coverage, but if you're planning a marathon shoot like a wedding or a documentary day, you'll probably want a spare or two. The USB-C port makes it easy to charge on the go, and you can even power the camera from a power bank while shooting video, which is a lifesaver for